Yeah, okay.
Hi guys, today we're here for training. We're at Cal Poly Pomona, the new student housing building. We're going to be talking about specifically building A and building B. You guys have different facilities, so we're going to stick with A and B now, and we have building D in the afternoon. So my name is Mike Shorsman. I work for A.O. Reed. I did the startup out here on building A, B, and D. Today we're going to be talking about hydronic pumps, and then we're also going to be talking about the plumbing, HVAC, and natural gas piping, meters, gauges, and valves, and then the earthquake valve as well. Just so I have a better idea of who's all here, so we could try to prioritize like the order that I could talk about everything. Are you facilities? Housing. Okay. Housing.
Facilities, and all the
Okay. So, does anyone here more care about like the underground piping? Does everyone care about the stuff in the buildings too? Besides, I know the housing guys will.
So housing is the one that's going to maintain the building.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the main thing.
Cool.
So we need stuff inside the building too.
I understand.
Mechanical.
Are these guys going to stay here the whole training, so it doesn't matter what order I go in, and I can just talk about everything?
Yeah, but I mean, housing is responsible for these buildings.
For inside the building.
And outside, the whole thing.
Okay, cool. Okay. So you guys know who I am. I've been with Reed for like 13 years. I've been doing startup and commissioning my whole time. I went through a 5-year apprenticeship learning startup and commissioning, and then also outside of that now, that's all I do is just turn on our systems and make sure they work right. Do you guys have any questions for me right now? If not, we'll walk over to building A. We'll start on the outside of building A, and then we'll go in the mechanical room, and I'll just walk through building A, get you guys familiar with everything there, and we'll go into building B. And then at the end, we'll probably go through one of the vaults, Vault 20. Vault 20 is the only one like on this construction site. I know I've worked with Kevin and a couple of his guys. We also have a Vault 19 and a Vault 18. It's probably gonna be out of your guys' scope, more on theirs. We already know where 18 and 19 are. I'll point out 20 when we get done with building B, okay? Let's cruise on over to the building.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we left the office trailers, the temporary office trailers. We're standing outside on the south side of building A. Right now we're gonna look at the main water inlet and then the main gas inlet to building A. The main backflow is gonna be this guy right over here. It just jumps underground and it comes up right here, this copper pipe. The water meter, right now I'm standing on the water meter box, so the water meter is installed in here. Underground, there's conduit that goes back inside the mechanical room for the wiring back for the meter. So this is the water line that goes to the mechanical room. The mechanical room's right on the other side of this wall. We'll venture around the corner and get in there right after here. The gas, we have gas that comes in from the street down here and it comes up. You have a main 4-inch plug shut-off valve right here. So if you shut off this valve right here, you're turning the gas off to the entire building A only, okay? Only building A. As we come up, this will be where the gas meter goes, right here. We're getting that thing installed here pretty quick. We come up, everyone know what this is? Earthquake valve, okay? So the earthquake valve, there's a little sight window right here on the downstream side. Green is good, red would mean it's tripped. It was as easy as some of the landscapers when they were digging in here, when they were hitting the ground, they tripped it. So to reset it, what you need to do is actually turn off the main gas to the building. If it does trip, the gas is already off downstream of it. So you gotta shut off the gas. If there's any pressure built up in it, try to prevent the pressure. When you're venting gas, just be careful. Make sure nobody's smoking. If you need to set up signage like that, you gotta leave the pressure way to reset it. Sometimes there's a flat screwdriver on the back side over here. Sometimes you can set it with pressure, sometimes you can't. I just recommend taking the pressure off the system to reset it. So we have the earthquake valve. Just downstream of the earthquake valve, you'll see this pipe right here. We're still medium pressure gas right here. Right now it's roughly 7.5 PSI. It'll fluctuate depending on the campus loop. We have a medium pressure gas line that runs into the building that feeds the boilers. And when we get inside the building, I'll show you that. So that's this line right here. Down from here, we have a test gauge right here. You can measure the inlet pressure. Then we have a shutoff valve. This shutoff valve, obviously the 2 in and out will isolate your regulator. This is your medium pressure to low pressure gas regulator. In building A, that we see right over here, this fenced area, that's one of the 2 RA units. the people that are in charge of watching all the students in the rooms. That's one of the rooms. So each one of those rooms has a gas range and a gas dryer, okay? So that's where this gas feeds. Each room, 2 drops in each room, okay? There are local shutoff valves in each room. We can go over there and put eyes on those. And then another test port here for downstream if you ever have to set the reg.
So this one that's going to our boilers here, we have no way of shutting this off separately.
Medium pressure, not outside. There are shutoff valves right inside the building.
Okay.
Any questions with the gas that's out here, or the water line from the main main water lines coming in? Question?
Is there a shutoff valve in there?
This is just a water meter. The shutoff valve would be the backflow right here. It just goes underground and it offsets into here to the water meter box. Okay, we'll go around the corner. All right, guys. Again, we're still at Cal Poly Pomona. This is just for the video. We are at Building A. We've walked around the building. We are inside the mechanical room on the first floor. I showed you guys the 4-inch copper water line that comes in. That's right here. We have a branch line. We have 2 pressure reducing stations. We have a high and a low flow. So during low flow conditions, we'll run water through this regulator right here. We're set at roughly 80 pounds. Okay, so in a low demand, most of the water will run through this regulator. Once the pressure keeps dropping, then we'll start opening our main high flow regulator right here. This is set at 70, so it's 80, 70. You want them roughly 10 pounds apart. That way the regs aren't fighting each other where that set point should be, okay? This adjustment shouldn't need to be dealt with, but there's a locking nut up here that you would have to loosen, and then you would tighten this. When I set them, if you try to set it with the outlet valve open, it's going to take forever for the system to read the actual pressure. So what I try to do is close this outlet valve, and then you could also close the inlet valve if you needed to take something apart. But if you close this valve, then you'll see the pressure right away of the set point. If not, if the valve is slowly leaking by, right, it might take an hour or something for you to see that end up set point, okay? So if you isolate the outlet valve, then you can get that set point right away and know if the valve is holding or not. So low flow here, high flow continues through the main valve down here. This one uses a pilot. So this valve right here is your pilot adjustment valve. This senses the downstream pressure and then opens and closes a main diaphragm valve up here. We have in and out gauges, in and out shutoff valves on this regulator. So that's the water coming into the building, the main water. Since we're right here, we'll go into our thermostatic mixing valve. Do you guys have any Leonard's thermostatic mixing valves on site? Do you guys have any storage tanks out on any of your other buildings for housing? Yeah. Okay. So we're still in domestic water. We're switching over in between kind of a hot and a cold system. The cold water will branch off here and feed the mixing valve. It also branches off and it feeds the heat exchangers behind me. Right now I have this mixing valve, both valves set at the maximum outlet temperature of like 124, okay? I don't want any higher than that for burning. And then from that point, we've set it down to a 120 leaving temperature, okay? So the leaving temperature on both valves is 120. This is kind of set up as a high flow, low flow thermostatic mixing valve again. Under, I believe it was 18 GPM, there's spring checks that are pushing down on this upper regulator, okay? So if you don't have enough flow, this main reg will stay closed and all the flow will run through this one out to the system. Once you reach that flow rate, the main springs will be lifted open and you'll have flow through both. They're both set the same and they have to be both set the same. We're using one outlet thermometer, okay? That way you know they're set the same. You're not reading 2 different outlet thermometers, okay? There is a set screw down here too, so don't come in here and just start cranking on that. If you do need to make an adjustment that you see this is drifting, you need to make sure you loosen that first, okay? But it is snug down so someone can't just accidentally bump that and change our settings, okay? Obviously, it's taking hot water from the left, mixing it in the regulator, cold from the right. There's a spring that's calibrated for temperature. So where your set point is, that there's a cartridge that'll slide back and forth to give you your outlet temperature, okay? In part of this loop too, to keep hot water in the building to all the fixtures, we have a domestic hot water return loop. It's gonna start behind us. There's a pipe up here that says hot water return. It's gonna come down, there's an aquastat, and it'll go through 2 circ pumps. The circ pumps are redundant, so only one will work. We have training on that tomorrow. They're twinned together real quick, so only one works. There's a master and a slave. The master will tell which one to run, depending if the aquastat's calling for the pumps to run, okay? But that water comes back. This is all just part of how the mixing valve works. That's why I'm explaining it right now. So in that hot water return loop, we have like 80% of the flow that will run through this line right here into the main mixing chamber of the valve and out. In part of that loop, if we followed it all the way out, that'll be this line right here too. This is part of the return loop. We have another circuit setter here. During no flow conditions, we're fine tuning these 2 circuits, or I've already fine tuned the circuit setters to give us a constant 120 degree outlet temperature, okay? So this line right here is putting water into the 140 degree loop, and we'll get into that in a sec. The other line is just mixing the return loop that's like roughly 110 or so coming back into the mixing valve. So what it'll do is it'll always be pushing a little bit of hot water on this side through the valve, through the lower one. The pump only runs through this lower valve, okay, not the upper valve, okay? So it'll always be pushing water through the valve and we'll be able to see that temperature. It is very crucial that this temperature does not drop below 120. Are you guys familiar with how domestic hot water return loops work? Okay, so normally the domestic hot water return loops are auto flows, okay? It automatically will flow a certain amount of GPM. Normally it's like 0.3, 0.33, somewhere around there. That way you always have water through that device, and then that way at the end of that fixture loop, when you turn on the fixture, you should have hot water within roughly 30 seconds, okay? Here it's a little different. We're using temperatures, which are thermostatically operated, okay? And the set point's 115. So if this drops below 120, those bellows won't be able to expand out and close off and shoot the water to the ends of the building, and you will have complaints of no flow or cold water. It's gonna take forever for the ends of the loop to work, okay? To heat up. So we need to make sure we're outputting 120 degrees at all times, okay? I wouldn't let it go over 121, okay? You always want to back up this gauge with a handheld thermometer at an actual fixture, okay? So whatever you see here, make sure you grab a gauge, a thermometer, and you're verifying that this temperature is reading within a degree or so of what you're reading at all the fixtures. I know that's a lot of information. So those temperatures, as they heat up, will start to expand. They don't ever close off. We can't ever have them close off. They always have to be sensing temperature. So there's always roughly 0.4 GPM running through that temperature set, okay? So it is important that the pump is running too for that. You guys have any questions on this mixing valve, how it works? Do you get the idea? We want 120 always leaving this thing. So if you did need to do a shutdown and you need to bring the system back online, on each pump there's a hose bib. Probably the easiest way would be to shut the power to the pumps off and run a hose, and you just gotta dump a little bit of water down the drain. Because remember, if we're not outputting that 120, once we start outputting that 120 and the pump's running, it'll be able to catch up. But until then, if it stays low, if the temperature stays low, it's just going to take a long time for that loop to catch up. Or it might not even, okay?
So if the water cools down, what you're saying is instead of the return line bringing the water back here, you want to drain it off.
I'm saying if you had to do maintenance on the system and it was down. Like if the system was down and drained and cold, then you would want to. Because unless you're using the water somewhere, this isn't going to output 120, right? This thing is only going to start outputting the 120 when you're flowing it. Unless it's already at temperature. So with this return loop that I was talking about, we're relying that it's coming back at 110 to maintain our 120 out in no flow conditions, okay, where nobody's using water. Does that make sense? So if it's cold and you're just trying to rely on that pump to pump it around, but it's only going out at 110, we're never going to be able to heat it up. It's going to take forever.
Yeah.
Because all these little, the circuit setters are designed to keep it at 120 when it's returning at 110. So it's returning at 100 it won't, okay? It'll just take forever for it to.
So that's what I'm asking. If it's returning at less than 110, then we should be draining that off instead of letting it come back here?
Yeah, you need to bleed it out somewhere.
Okay.
It's easy here because there's hose bibs
Right.
there. Since we're talking about that, let me go over here and show you guys. Right over here.
Oh, okay.
We'll go over this more too. It's kind of, I don't know where to stand so you can see or so you can't see me. These are the two circ pumps. Again, we have training on these tomorrow.
Right.
Again, they're redundant. The disconnect switches are here. So you don't want to free spin the pump. What we'd want to do is turn off the disconnect switches here, turn off one, turn off the other. And then what I would do is I would shut, you could choose one or the other, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Just shut the valve. There are check valves leaving, but I mean, they're gravity check valves, they're mechanical devices, okay? They're holding, but I'd shut the valve. That way you know for sure you're drawing the water through the system, okay?
Right.
So since this is the end of the return and the shutoff valve is below it, it's awesome because you can bleed that out. Or if you know that someone drained the building, if somebody drained the building for whatever work or accident or purpose, you have to come here. Make sure if you know they are doing that work, make sure you shut off these pumps, okay? Because if you shut off the water out to the building and these are running, they'll cavitate and
They'll burn up.
Exactly,
Yeah,
okay?
you're gonna have that.
Okay, so if you're doing any water on the domestic, remember this is domestic hot water return pumps, make sure you shut off power to the pumps first, okay? Very, very first thing you do. Then start isolating. Well, I mean, if it's an emergency, shut valves, isolate it that way, but you can't forget to shut off these pumps, okay? Because they will burn up. So if you do your work on the hot water, whatever floor it is, it's all tied together. Make sure you come in here and shut these valves again and hook up a hose, and this will help you bleed the air that gets stuck at the top of the hot water system, okay? You'll force it down. Just hook up a hose, put it into a drain. There's a floor drain in between the tanks,
Yeah.
and just open these things up. I'd even run 2 hoses. The more flow you get, the
better.
more air you're gonna pull down and bleed out the system, okay? Circ pumps, when you're done with that procedure, make sure you open the valves back up and then turn on the pumps, okay? So these are the hose bibs that I was talking about right here.
Now, would it be good to wait until the water is 110 coming out of there before you close that stuff up and turn it back on?
You can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we're still here. We're still back in the mechanical room, building A, first floor. We have 2 storage tanks. So these are domestic hot water storage tanks. They're storing water at 140 degrees. Anytime you store water in a tank, we gotta be at 140 for Legionella. There's an equalizer line in between the tanks. That's this one right here. And each tank has an inlet and an outlet, and an in and an out for the heat exchanger loop, and then an outlet to the mixing valve at the top. So there's 3 shutoff valves per tank, and then each tank will share the isolation equalizer line, okay? There's drains at the bottom, pressure release at the top. The hot water comes out of the, sorry, bear with me here. It's been a while since I've actually looked at this piping. The hot water comes out of the tank. We have 2 circ pumps. These pumps are not redundant. They can both work at the same time. Each pump has its own aquastat. There's one on the front of the tank. And since these tanks are spun to get the piping coming out the middle, the other aquastat's on the other side of storage tank 1, okay? So each aquastat runs a pump individually. And it'll draw water out of the tanks, push water through the heat exchangers right here, and then back into the tanks. Again, 140 degree set point. We'll talk about the heat exchangers tomorrow as well. We have domestic hot water and heating hot water system. The heating hot water is what's heating up the domestic hot water to 140. Okay? We'll talk about more of these tomorrow. Every piece of equipment has a shutoff most every piece of equipment has the shutoff valve on the in and the out. For the heat exchangers, this is we're kind of going into HVAC stuff. A lot of this stuff now is just going to be mixed together, plumbing and HVAC, okay, because it's all intertwined. To make one loop through plumbing and then another for HVAC seems like it might be a waste of time, okay? So that's the heat exchangers. So these two pumps and the piping that's in the middle of the tank are the water, that's drawing the water out of the tank through the heat exchanger back into the tank. The piping off the top is the 140 that feeds your mixing valve, okay? It only feeds the mixing valve in this building. Then we have hose bibs over here on the outlet of the pumps. Shut-off valves at the heat exchanger on both the domestic and the heating hot water side. Again, we'll talk about the switches and the pumps tomorrow. Any questions on the stuff that's behind me, the storage tanks? Real quick too, this expansion tank is for the domestic system, the domestic hot water system. Okay, do you guys all know how the expansion tank works and how to check the charge on it?
What's the charge in it?
The charge is 78 pounds. Our set point's 80, our high set point's 80, so we want a couple pounds under that. Okay, that way if the system heats up. So the domestic has a expansion tank because at some points it becomes a closed loop with a circulating pump. So if there's any expansion in that system, it will go into this tank instead of into the piping system, and which could possibly burst the piping. And that's coming off the hot water line, okay? There is a check valve on the cold water inlet after we turn into the heating hot water, or the domestic hot water system. So that's the main check valve up there to isolate the hot system from the cold system. Again, the cold water makes up into the inlet of the heat exchangers, okay? That's the makeup for the hot water system. It's not making it into the tank, it's making before the heat exchanger. So if there is a demand, we could already start preheating that water through the heat exchanger and not start cooling the tanks down, okay? Moving back out of this room, we have a water line that comes over. There's a backflow. From the backflow on is going to be your heating hot water makeup. The backflow's here. The pressure reducing valve station's up here. The set point on the pressure reducing valve is 57 pounds. Again, we've checked the charge on the tank is 1 psi below that, 56 pounds. We didn't really go over the way to set the tanks. So anytime you set the expansion tank, you have to have it isolated from the system. So here we have a different configuration. Where did that guy go? This guy ties in over here. We have a shutoff valve up here at the system, okay? We need to use this shutoff valve up here and not the one on the bottom of the tank. First of all, it'd be super hard to drain the tank because the shutoff valve is after our drain, okay? So we need to shut off the valve up here. Keep this guy open. Hook a hose here to the drain. Drain the pressure out of the tank, all the pressure out of the tank. You can't have any pressure in the tank to verify the nitrogen charge in the tank, okay? And then that gets me into the second point. We use dry nitrogen. If you use air, the different temperatures of air can affect the expansion tank setting. Nitrogen holds that pressure at a better temperature range than air does, okay? Again, this tank is set at 56 pounds. The domestic tank was 78, okay? Once the pressure is off, I think this guy is right here. There's an air schrader port right here. There's a gauge on the side of the tank. I like to use my own gauge. This one was a little harder to get to. I had made like a little Schrader extension that you can swivel on here. You'll take this cap off, put your gauge on, read the pressure. When you're reading the pressure, I like to always just keep the drain hose open, or if you know it's all the way drained, take the hose off. Sometimes if the hose gets kinked or something, it might be able to hold a little bit of pressure in there. Just make sure that you have a bucket under there. I mean, it should be done bleeding, but in case the charge was low and you had to recharge it and there's still a little bit of water in the tank, yeah, you'd push the water into the bucket instead of... The most important part is just make sure that this valve here, the drain valve, is open. Again, at this time, the isolation valve at the top of the system is still off, okay, because we're checking the charge on it, okay? Any questions on the expansion tank? When you're done, put it back in the same order, put the cap back on. Make sure you keep the cap on the Schrader port. Eventually those little cores, the pressors start leaking, and then you can leak your charge out, okay? I would check this thing probably like every 6 months or so, check the charge, okay? On the tanks. If not, yearly for sure. And then once everything is buttoned back up here, the drain valve is closed, then you can slowly, anytime you operate a valve, right, we open it slowly, we don't ever slam open a valve or slam it closed, okay? If you slam it closed, you could create water hammer. If you open it too quick, it's just bad.
And now that pressure gauge right there reads it all the time?
Yeah,
Or...
but it's the system pressure, not just the bladder pressure.
Okay.
To check the bladder pressure, you have to shut it off and drain it. Yep.
And then you could check that.
Yep.
Okay.
Because right now it's open to the system, and whatever that pressure is, I mean, it is the suction pressure,
Right.
but that's pushing into the tank.
Right.
Cool. We have 2 chilled water pumps. We're kind of going to get into some hydronic. We're still in valves and HVAC, all that good stuff too. 2 chilled water pumps. They're redundant. We can verify that with Doug through his control sequence. And 2 heating hot water pumps.
I assume they're redundant also.
They are, yes, to the best of my knowledge, but Doug's sequence in the controls will be able to get us that information. Again, each pump has a shutoff valve. Each pump has a suction diffuser. Does everybody know how a suction diffuser works?
Yes.
Okay. There is a screen inside. As you can see, I pulled the startup strainers out on all the pumps. Okay. The final screen is still installed. You'll get to that through the back end here. Every pump has a check valve too.
The final screen is finer than that, or
No, it's going to be not as fine, right? Yeah, that's just for startup to get all the fine particulars. I think it's roughly like 1/8 inch opening holes or so on that screen. So right now we don't have any chilled water pumps running. What we first want to do is look at the front end and see what the differential pressure is. If we're in here, for some reason somebody's turned off this pump. It's in off mode. We'll have VFD training too on a different day. But right now, control is trying to turn this pump on and it's in off mode, it won't run, okay? Part of this is that they might not need to run a pump, okay? If the DP from the plant is high enough, or if the DP in the building is high enough and we don't need to run one of our pumps, there's a bypass loop up here with a check valve. It goes around the pump. Right up here, it's a big black insulated box. It's not a box, it's a foam insulation. Right up here. So it's this chain wheel right here and this chain wheel right here, 2 shutoff valves. The check valve is in between it. So we can flow chilled water around the pumps. Okay? So back to the VFD, it's important that those VFDs stay in auto at all times.
Is that a normally open?
Normally open valve, yes.
No actuator on it?
No actuator, it's just a check valve, so water can't go backwards through it. So it's only gonna go
It's
through it.
open all the time.
It's open all the time. Yep. That way, if we in low demands, maybe in like the winter, there's IDF rooms out here are chilled water cooled. So in that low demand, we can run the water through that bypass. We don't want to run water through a pump unless the pump's running, okay? Because it can start spinning the pump and you can backfeed the VFD with electricity, okay? So that's the point of that valve up here. There are extra shutoff valves up here in the ceiling. Supply and return for hot and cold. So there's 4 up here that will feed off, we call it segment 1 of the building, which is like to our right. And then there's 4 shutoff valves right up here. Excuse me. That will shut off what we call segment 2. Just know that your electric rooms are off of the segment 2 side, okay? So if you shut those 4 valves, or the 2 chilled water valves, you're gonna be shutting off your cooling for the main electric rooms and the risers that go up. Okay, every floor has an electric room.
What have you been using to get to these valves? 10-foot ladder?
Yeah. Extension ladder.
Extension ladder.
Yep. They're extra valves. They're put in for testing.
Yeah.
So you don't need to operate them all the time, but they are there for you guys. Above me is an air handler. This air handler feeds segment 1 of first floor. This is just for the hose kits. So we have a hose kit on the heating and a hose kit on the chilled, okay? Control valve. This is the auto flow right here. And we have a strainer on the supply. The auto flow and the control valve are on the return. Okay. Screen. Shut off valves on there. On the expansion tank, so we don't trap air in the loop, we have an air vent right here. Keep this valve open at all times unless you're doing any maintenance on this air vent. But we want to keep this valve open at all times. Were you guys able to see the pressure reducing station over here for the heating hot water lift? I didn't get to talk about the line underneath it. The line underneath it will be a bypass. This bypass valve needs to be shut at all times. If you leave it open or if it starts leaking by, your outlet pressure will be your inlet pressure. We don't want that. Okay.
What's our inlet pressure?
It should be 80. 80? Yeah, because we're on the same level as that, the main pressure reducing valve down there. As it's flowing water, there could be a little pressure drop through that backflow that's in front of it. Make sure this bypass valve is closed. We want the 2 upper valves open at all times. That loop is a closed loop, so we shouldn't be adding water, but there could be a time where if you have to do any maintenance up on a fan coil unit, you want to make sure that when you're done, it fills the system back up instead of draining the system down from the top. This guy right here is your air separator for the heating hot water loop. There's an air vent at the top of that as well. Make sure that valve stays open at all times. That way, as any air can make its way back down from the building, it'll get swirled out of the air separator and vented out the top. Everybody familiar with the air separator? There is a blow down drain here at the bottom. There is a cutout here that you can reach the handle, okay? There's a shutoff valve handle up inside this thing. I'd probably blow that thing down once a year. There are blowdowns at the bottom of each pump too. We don't want to get crazy with doing blowdowns everywhere because remember these are closed systems. There's inhibitor in all of them. We only want to blow it down if it's needed. Pot feeder for heating hot water loop right down here. This is where you'll add your chemicals. I believe, I haven't talked to him in a while, Chempro, right? Chempro does your, Kevin. Chempro, right? Officer, sorry, officer. Okay. So does so housing will have a different provider? Okay. Anyways, it shouldn't matter. Just make sure if it's not the same company that we did our startup with, just make sure whoever's coming in does a water analysis and make sure that their chemicals are compatible or they flush the system and then they add theirs. That's another way of doing it too. But this is your pot feeder for that. They've always told me never to close it all the way off because it's a steel drum. You always want a little bit of flow. That's why this valve is kind of cracked, okay? And you can feel the base of the bottom one.
Shut off,
So somebody had shut the bottom valve for me, okay? That's why I was trying to figure out why this is cold. We just need a little bit of flow. The water treatment guys never want dead legs, okay? They never want no flow in any run of pipe. We'll keep moving on out of this room here. We got our 4 boilers. These are our heating hot water boilers. We do have shut-off valves on the inlets and the outlets of every boiler, and every boiler has a strainer, okay? All the strainers were cleaned during our flushing procedure.
Mike, can you make sure to point out the chill water?
Each boiler also has its own factory-provided control valve here. So this valve is operated from each boiler individually, okay? Valves, we have gauges, thermometers.
And what is that, just for flow?
It's firing. We'll have more training on that tomorrow. I just want to make sure that you know right now that that valve is being controlled from the actual boiler, not through BMS or anything like that, okay? And then we'll get into that more tomorrow.
These chill water and hot water flow building or all of this? All the building?
Just per building. Per building. Yep. So just building A hot water, just building A chilled water. And then HVAC, we'll do this one. Outside airflow station for this air handler, for air handler 1 right here. Okay, right here. And then right above it, you see my laser pointer. We have the Onicon flow meter. You're seeing the display down there, the sensor right here. For chilled water. Where did they put the hot water? You know what? It's up on top of the duct right here. It's after, it's the pumped outlet, it's up on the header. And then that header is also where the boiler's header temperature sensor is, okay? So that's just the flow reading device for these 2 Onicons right here, okay? We'll come out. We'll talk about the low stuff here first. Questions?
Is this outside air?
This is exhaust. Yes, this is. Yeah. No. This is outside air here.
Outside air?
The exhaust side is it goes out the wall back there and out the other louver on the other end of the wall. No, it's far enough away. It's like right there. Right there. We're going low. Chilled water right here. Chilled water is made at your guys' central plant. The building A main shutoff valves are going to be right here. Return valve on this side, supply on this side. Okay? So if you had a main chilled water leak somewhere, these are going to be your valves that will turn off the building. But again, remember we have BDF, which is like your main telecom room, IDFs, and electric rooms, all fed off chilled water, okay? The campus chilled water. Some of the IDFs have fan coils, and some of the IDFs are fed off of the air handlers. A straight cold tap off the air handler. Okay? So just know that if you shut the chilled water down, we need to get some temporary cooling devices over here for the IDF rooms, okay? Like move and cool or something like that for the electric and IDF rooms. Okay? Coming up, for our flushing procedure, we have a bypass loop right here. This valve is going to be a normally closed valve. It's this chain wheel operator right here. Normally closed. If it's open, you're going to kind of create like a primary secondary loop with your central plant and the building. Okay? Normally closed valve right here. And then now that we're up in the ceiling, we'll look at the gas again. The gas comes in at that back wall that we saw that comes up. It's going to be this drop right here. This is that medium pressure gas line I was talking to you about outside. Okay, it comes over. We have 2 shutoff valves in front of the pressure reducing valve. And then we come out here and we go through 4 more gas valves. These gas valves are not 100% shutoff valves. They are flow. They maintain a gas pressure through them. Does that make sense? They don't close off, they don't reduce pressure. They just maintain flow, okay? Maintain the gas flow to each boiler, okay? We have test boards in front of them. So the only reg you're setting for reducing pressure, for the maximum pressure on the boiler, is going to be this guy right here. And he's sized for boiler, okay? That's all the information for this 1 mechanical room. I know it's a lot.
And we're bringing what kind of pressure to what
Medium.
kind of pressure?
So it's 7.5. I want to say it was right under the max. So it's probably around 13. It's been a while since we had that one. They're like right under our ground. I'll get that information. Everybody good in here? Alright, let's keep walking the building.
Yeah.
Alright guys, we're still on the first floor. We were finally able to leave the mechanical room. Down here, this is again segment 2, first floor. We have air handler training in a couple days. The air handler is back here in bike storage. We'll go over that. But with valves and HVAC and hydronics and all that, we do have reheats over here. So through this access door, we can see one of the VAVs. So at every VAV, we have a hose kit. We have the supply valve shut off and the return valve shut off and a control valve up here, feeding all the reheats that are down there, okay? There are some reheats in the ceiling up here. There are removable panels in here. It'll be some of the smaller ones, like see how this one right here. There's a smaller panel here, so there's going to be a VAV up here. Those will be located on the drawings after location.
And how are these panels removed?
I believe they're spring clips.
Okay. So you pull them down partially and
Yeah.
then
There should be like a ceiling. The ceiling guys training for
I
that.
mean, we shouldn't have to get to these very frequently, I guess, anyways.
No, yeah, you
There's no
should.
maintenance on them.
The maintenance on a VAV would be like if you're starting to lose cooling, if you're not seeing that, you'll need to check the control valve. Make sure the strainer's clear, that it didn't get plugged up for debris that got in there. But the physical location, I wouldn't think you need to get to it too often unless you're seeing an issue with that zone being cold or something. Right? Plumbing over here. So the plumbing systems, we'll go to an easy spot right now. But all the fixtures on the first, make sure the camera's brought up. Right now we're on first floor in the laundry room. Plumbing fixtures on the first, second, and third floor will all have pressure reducing valves in front of them. So for this zone in here, there'll be a pressure reducing valve. This specific one, we gotta look at the drawings. I don't know exactly where this one is, but typically you'll have the pressure reducing valve right in the ceiling above it, okay? So we'll verify on drawings the actual location. I'll be able to show you one over here.
Thank you.
Is this all gone? And the HVAC and the hydronic piping for chilled and hot water, the mains are all run in the overhead above the ceilings in here. And then there's certain riser points that they go vertical. There's no shutoff valves in any of that, okay? So if you have an issue in any of the overhead piping or like anything in the wall in between floors, you're gonna have to shut one of the segments that I was talking about. Remember,
So there are 2 segments per building?
there are 2, yeah, we installed extra valves that kind of created two segments per building,
Okay.
okay?
So a broken pipe somewhere up in this segment, you have to go to the boiler room and shut this whole
Yep,
section.
the whole
down.
wing off, yep. And then remember, on this side of the building over here, we called it segment 2. The electric rooms are fed off of this side. So if you have to do work on this side of the building, make sure you provide temporary cooling for the
Oh,
electric
yeah.
room and
Yeah, I
IDF rooms, yeah.
understand.
I just wanna make sure I reiterate that because people shut off valves here for us. Luckily it was before we needed cooling in those rooms and we lost cooling in those rooms. So I just wanna make sure you guys are aware of that. If you shut off this side of the building, it will stop cooling to the electric rooms up above us, okay?
What about the emergency generator? Is that providing cooling to those rooms?
The generator, let me see how that
I
was.
believe it is. I mean, so
Oh man. Well, it would only be to the chilled water pumps. I'm trying to remember if the pumps were, because I know that plant pumps can pump water through the building, so you'll get minimal cooling. I don't know if the pumps. I don't remember if they have the pumps on e-power with the generators. off the top of my head. I'll look into that and get back to you on that tomorrow.
Okay.
I do know they put the air handlers and the fan coils on e-power, because obviously you can't blow air in with those devices, but I think they were relying on the plant pumps to provide minimal cooling, you know, by pumping water through that bypass that will go through the building. Because at the beginning we were able to cool the electric rooms without running our pumps. So, cool?
Okay.
I'll look into that for tomorrow. You can go outside. You can go around the corner over here.
Most of them, not all of them.
All right, guys, if you can, maybe a couple come in at a time. Remember I was talking about the pressure reducing valves? Because we're at 80 pounds on that main regulator and we're going up 8 floors, we have zone pressure reducing valves. That's going to be up here. Okay, so you have one for the hot on the left and one for cold on the right.
Excuse me.
So they bring it from 80 to
80 to 45. The outlet pressure on all the pressure reducing valves on 1, 2, and 3 will be 45 psi. So we have a set here. There's another set over here.
And that's just for these restrooms, right?
Yes.
That's just the list.
For that local-
Downstairs restrooms are underneath the counter.
Yes, and we'll go up there and I'll show you those too. Yeah, we'll do that. But yeah, every fixture or every room will have it, or it'll feed a cluster. We'd have to look at the drawings to figure out exactly what cluster on which ones. Like I know there's 2 sets of valves up here. Like 2, one for hot and cold and one for hot and cold. So we just have to check the drawings and figure out exactly where each one of those are going. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw these. So there's gonna be a bunch of them throughout the entire 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor. There are shutoff valves in front, only in front of those pressure reducing valves.
For
Okay?
these areas.
For everywhere. Every pressure reducing valve only has the shutoff valve on the inlet. So then you'll have to make sure you drain the piping system downstream of it to work on that. Okay?
it's only to a couple fixtures at the most.
Yeah, yeah. And then upstairs, the water comes in the bottom and out the top. I was taking off the inlet gauge, it's on the T, and draining it into a bucket in that one. If you try to take off the pressure reducing valve itself, it made a mess. Like there's a little lip on the low T that like you could put the bucket right under it and it catches the water perfect in that. So then I was draining it into that bucket and fixing it. We'll go over that in a sec too. There's nothing back here. So shut-off valves. All the sinks have angle stops underneath them as well. Okay. The other side of the building is going to be really similar to this side right here. There's going to be more of the pressure reducing valve stations. There's another one of those living room units. We'll actually go over here and go inside that living room unit. The other one's going to be pretty much the same, just a different configuration. I think that one is like the master RA, the one down here behind us. It's like the head RA person, so the rooms are a little bigger. They have like a bigger master or something like that. But other than that, everything's the same. We'll walk over to this one right now. Alright guys, we're still in building A. We're on the first floor. We're in one of the, they call them like RA units. It's the person that's in charge of watching the kids in the building.
Coordinator is what we call it.
Coordinator, okay. So like a coordinator, the drawings, yeah, I called it something different. This is like one of the people that are in charge of watching all the students that are living in the building, okay? Their kitchen, again, we said, this is that low pressure gas regulator that's outside the building. So here's a gas device right here with a shutoff valve. And then around the corner we have the washer dryer. The dryer's gonna have a gas connection with a shutoff valve down, you know, a foot or so off the floor. Again, with the fixtures, we have a kitchen sink. We have hot and cold water to the sink, right? So this access door right here is gonna be your pressure reducing valve, okay? And then there's also a restroom back around the corner. There's another set of pressure reducing valves up here.
That's the restroom?
I'm sorry?
For the restroom?
Yeah. Or just a different part of the building. Actually, those could even be for these washer dryers. Okay, we have to double check the drawings to figure out all the drops. The drawings that I'm referring to are going to be the AO read drawings. Okay, make sure you use the AO read drawings first to look at everything. There's also a BIM model. There's like a three-dimensional model that you can get downloaded to tablets, like your iPad, and you could even like when you hold it, it has a camera and it knows where you're at, and it'll show you piping in the wall and stuff. Okay, so make sure you follow the proper procedures and channels to get that information, because that'll be really beneficial, okay? So pressure reducing valve up here, pretty much any drop that you see will have a pressure reducing valve associated with it. And we just gotta look at the drawings to figure that out. So no door in here. I think it was the back in this bathroom, pressure closet. Up in this access door up here, we have another set of pressure reducing valves. So like I said, pretty much every fixture is going to have its own pressure.
First 3 floors.
First 3 floors, because after that we get below that pressure.
And what kind of pressure reducing valves are these? Are they just like
They're Wilkins 500 XLs.
Okay.
Yeah, so
They're commercial grade.
Yeah.
With a strainer in for it somewhere, right?
Some have strainers, some don't. The system was flush before the pressure reducing valves were installed. Okay, and then another restroom behind us.
I guess there's a strainer to start with on the cold water.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to, we can cruise over, do you want to see, I mean, I think you guys are here for Vault 20. You know where it is. A little bit of stuff is changing, like the appearance, right? Because it was in a certain area, you used to like, but I don't know if they're taking, I'm assuming they're going to be taking some of the stats of the rings off the top. I'm assuming it's not exhibit. I don't know if they're ring, yeah. Right now it's like 3 or 4 rings above grade, like 12-inch rings. So I don't know who's in charge of.
We'll make sure we put eyes on it.
Cool. Okay. All right. Any questions on the living room unit down here?
No.
Okay.
Where are we headed now?
Spinning. Are you recording?
Yeah,
You can
sure.
turn it off right now. Or did you ever? So again, these ones, when we're done, should have gauges on the in and the out.
Oh, okay, so you're putting a gauge like on the bottom of the reg is what you're saying.
I gotta look at this one again. Some of these are in.
Yeah, this one doesn't have one, but what I'm saying is.
Yep. So that
you're
corner
putting-
plug will
Yeah,
come.
you would potentially put a gauge on
Yep.
that, on that
And
plug
then
right
the
there.
T on the inlet,
Right,
the T will be the inlet pressure.
okay.
Okay, so you have your shutoff valve on the end. There'll be a shutoff valve on the end this way. So this is typical. This is a guest restroom. This will be typical 2 through 8. Again, the main shutoff valves are up here. You can isolate the toilet and the sink and the urinal individually if need be. You don't have to shut off the whole restroom to service one part of it, but you can.
Sometimes it's just easier that way, I guess.
Sure.
So.
It's however you guys think, whatever the issue that comes up, you know, just depends what it is. It'll in the back.
Standing too close.
Before we get the building, so they still have to go through and replace all the filters.
From what I know, we already did that for commissioning testing. So if they're dirty again, we'll have to talk to Sutton about that, and then they'll have to, because we provided the final filters now for commissioning testing, because at that point the building's supposed to be clean, so we'll have to address that with Sutton.
Someone should change them. They're pretty bad. Before we get in the buildings.
I mean, look at this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a new.
I hear you.
Okay. I mean, everybody. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, people kind of, if it's dirty, it's dirty. It's not like robot.
Yep.
We need to talk to Morris and address the issue of all the filters for all buildings.
Okay? Which is handicap accessible. So nothing is below here for their access.
Right.
The pressure reducing valves will be up here in the ceiling. Okay? One access door here, one access door here for each one of the valves. Again, a shutoff valve on the inlet, and then downstream you'll just have to drain the fixtures down here. It works easier here than on the other one. I'm not sure why that was open. Okay, so overhead on the first two bathrooms would be the ADAs, and then we'll go look at the next restroom. So here's our next restroom.
So what are these vents between on the outside for?
Okay, so those are transfer air. So all the makeup air comes from each room unit and the corridor fan coils, and then that's transferring the exhaust air from the corridor into the space. And then there's like 4 or so exhaust
They
coils
take it out. So that's bringing the air in.
from the hallway.
So
into
if
the
you block that off, you don't get any air.
you're going to create a big negative
Right,
in here.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it's not going to be good.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a typical restroom you're going to see right here with a cabinet underneath. I think at the end of the hallway down here, they were talking about drilling windows into the cabinets to be able to see the gauges through. I don't know where we're at with that. Okay, but there's 6 screws. There's security Torx. They're T25s. There's 3 on this side and 3 on this far side. And then you can pull the counter out, or the cabinet out, for access to the pressure releasing valves. And that's where your shutoff valve is too. So the shutoff valve for this entire restroom is underneath those. That's what the window is supposed to be for.
For shut off.
Okay, they're addressing that. So that's not going to be the final product.
It just needs the, yeah, I don't know where the status of that is.
No, I know. The other key is the electrical room down on this side.
That is on the other side. I need to look weird, because it seems like it should have been the other shutoff valve, but it was this one. So I think this is what they were thinking. I don't know.
It's not. They're working on a solution. That's not the solution.
Yeah.
And so.
Where is the shut off valve? Also, I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to reach that, but me.
Excuse me.
We got short arms.
Again, each fixture in here has a shutoff valve.
Except the showers. Showers don't have shut off.
They do. When we get over to B,
Yeah.
I have a valve on my cart over there. We're gonna walk over to B and I'll show you. There's 2
But you
shut
still
off
gotta
valves.
take this
You have to take trim
off
apart, yes.
and
Oh, you can
stuff
take
like
the
that,
thing
so-
off the wall.
Not the entire thing, just the handle and the cover.
Right.
And then there's 2 shut off valves.
Oh, the intricate stops.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Or you can take. Yeah.
But other than that, you need to turn off all the water to do it. You know, if the handle or something is behind the wall that's leaking, you need to shut. Yeah.
It's okay.
shut
We
the valve.
work. With
Yeah, I
it,
got
so,
you.
yeah.
We
Okay.
have the same stuff in our other buildings.
One of the other ones. Okay.
Bradley's with Bradley.
Fan coil valves, all these restrooms from here out are all the same. Let's go around the corner. There's a mop sink, there's a janitor closet. Again, we're addressing the no gauges right now, but again, another drop, okay? Own set of pressure reducing valves. All the outlet pressures are always gonna be 45.
So, but any plumbing fixture in the building is 45 PSI for the showers, for the sinks, everything.
Yep.
Okay.
And that was addressed in an R5.
No, just ask.
This room right here is gonna be transferred from outside out there. There's a backdraft dampers you can see through the opening. We're gonna draw air through here and out. The air for the trash room goes into the trash chute shaft. There's an exhaust fan on the roof that draws air through the shaft.
So all the air will come in through here, through here. Oh.
Into this louver up here, or this
Okay.
grill, excuse me.
Oh, no, there,
Yeah,
okay,
that
into
grill.
the shaft.
Yeah, there's a fan,
Fan, right, they'll suck it out into the shaft.
and there's another fan.
Another fan will put it up over there.
The 8th floor is the only one that's different.
Okay.
The fan on the roof is serving the trash room. On the
Oh,
outside.
so there's actually a fan right here connected to this, and it pushes it inside of the trash chute.
Trash chute shaft, yep.
So we're gonna make sure we always got a section on this. And there's not a timer or anything, it just runs all the time.
Doug, I can't remember off the
Okay.
top of my head which fans are on Doug's schedule.
Okay.
So this is our electric room. So this is the main electric room for the 2nd floor. We do have tattletales here, so there's a drip pan.
For the fan coil.
Sorry?
That's for the fan coil.
Yeah, I don't think it's a turnover key yet.
Yeah, I think,
It's just a different core than they would get.
No, I remember.
It's a typical room unit fan coil.
So that's the
Overflow tattletale, yeah. So there are also condensate switches in the drain pans as well. In the main drain pan, the primary drain pan.
Are they a float that's in the pan?
Yes.
Tied to the side of the pan or
Yeah.
something?
Okay. We'll go over that on
It's
our fan
it's
coil.
wired in series of a chilled water valve
It
or
does,
something
no,
like that.
wall.
Or into its control.
Into the controller, yes, and then that output would shut down. What was I going down here for? It was mostly those first ones. Is this the first restroom?
Yes.
So this is our other ADA, so the valves are gonna be above the head, okay? Everything else is down below, from that way over. Everything now from 2 up is exactly the
That's
same,
good,
all the
that's
way
good.
up.
That's
The only thing that could change for the plumbing stuff would be on the 8th floor, there's an air gap that feeds the trash chute, like cleaning system or the makeup water for that.
Right, we've seen the little hatch.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that would be different for plumbing as we go up the building. Okay?
And this hatch, the hatch is in the center here?
I think that's the Sparky's hatch. Electrical.
Okay.
We don't, okay, actually we do need to go up to 8, those thermostatic valves. Remember the temp control valves I was talking about?
Yes.
Those? We'll just go up, I'll show you. And then building B, the layout is different, but the valves that will close are gonna be the same way. So I'll make sure I revisit that over on building B, because I wanna make sure you guys see that one too. Again, it has all the same components, just in a different configuration, but the valves and everything are in the same location at every point, you know what I'm saying? Okay, let's get this guy closed before I forget. It's like a super long screwdriver.
All the time.
Yes, if it's
If
cold.
it's cold, then obviously
Go
there's
to the
something
next
wrong
one,
with it.
and go to the next
Yeah.
one.
And
If
if
those
you-
are hot,
then
then
you
it's
know-
probably something here.
Okay.
So then you could take that out of the piping system with the unions and make sure the check valve opens. Make sure that there's no debris stuck in the thermostatic device. Because the bellows has like a charge in it. If it loses a charge, it might go one way or the other.
What kind of a charge?
I'm not sure.
Nitrogen?
No, probably more of like a refrigerant thing that can, because nitrogen isn't good at
Thermocoupling.
yeah.
Thermo-
It's not good at like expanding.
Expanding.
So
Yeah.
just one quick
Temperature.
question. Down in the mechanical room, on the floor, there was the pressure regulator for the hot water. The
Let's go down to
tank. No, the small one. That was the
Okay,
expansion
the red tank?
The red one, yes.
Okay.
And then the big tall one, what was that one?
Heating hot water.
Heating hot water. Got it. Okay.
So since your chilled water is tied into the loop,
Right.
the campus loop, you don't need all that.
Right. And-
Same with the air separator and all
Yeah,
that.
that
good
was
stuff.
it's a gravity system.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Do you want to go back and visit anything else?
I would like to go to building B
Okay.
and just go through quickly,
Yeah.
faster than
Yeah,
you did this
'cause-
morning.
exactly.
Yeah,
Get more their layout.
And then, of course, our group will get together and we'll go through the video, and then maybe we'll get somebody to come back, and because I'd really like to have a hands on how to shut the building down.
Okay. I
I
mean,
mean-
we have time right now. We have till noon, right?
Okay.
So
We could do that in building B.
Sure.
And just show us physically, you know.
Okay.
So the thought would be is we've got a wall, a plumbing leak in this wall.
Okay.
And we've kind of checked everything. Now we have to shut the building down.
Okay.
And so the question, and then what do we need to do?
Sure.
And
Let's
so-
do that over there.
Yeah.
All right, Mike again, A.O. Reed. We're Cal Poly Pomona Student Housing. We've switched over to Building B. We're on the first floor. We're right outside the building. We have our main gas line coming up over here. We have the exact same configuration. We have medium pressure gas coming up to the earthquake valve. The branch line is going to be the gas that feeds the boilers in the mechanical room. We have a pressure reducing valve here that serves the two RA, the two units, the living units on the first floor. And that's the gas out here.
And the laundry room.
Yes, and the laundry room,
And the
excuse me,
laundry
it
room,
does. It
yes.
feeds the laundry room on both first floors. I forgot about that. Sorry about that.
I'm assuming it goes
It
over
does.
to the main lobby kitchen also.
But that's
Even though we're
Yeah,
not gonna use it,
that
the
goes
gas
to
is
the lobby
gonna be
kitchen.
there,
Yeah, we
right?
can double check the drawings for the final locations of all the gas lines.
We know where they are.
It's
We
the
know
low
where they are.
pressure
It's
line. Okay.
the apartments, laundry
Yeah,
room.
medium pressure coming off before the regulator feeding the boilers. All the other stuff is off of the low pressure.
Those earthquake valves.
Okay.
You mentioned
Reset.
you shut when you reset the. You mentioned you shut the. You
Yeah,
want
you
to shut
shut
the main off first.
yeah, shut the main off. Sometimes you can reset it, like this one's gonna be hard.
I mean,
You
I've
have
done
to have
that
an angle
with
screwdriver.
some small ones. I've just gone over and hit it with the thing, and it resets it without shutting the gas off.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it does, but we're on the medium pressure side now, so it's still rated for the pressure, but sometimes it's
Okay.
harder to reset it
So
with that medium
you
pressure.
shut it off, you reset it.
Yeah, you can bleed pressure.
Bleed pressure.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah,
Reset
bleed the
it.
pressure off, yeah, and then reset it. I mean, try to reset it first. If you
got
can't, then shut off the valve.
That's what I didn't understand
Yeah.
where to bleed the pressure, but
Okay.
so you have to take that plug out of there.
Yep. And put the plug back in because if somebody bumps the handle.
Oh, and here's the first screwdriver right here, I
We
guess.
drill a hole
That's
from the
the
wall.
reset.
No, you gotta-
So we're gonna get the screwdriver in there, I guess.
Yeah, you can put a adapter on there. Or an adapter. You got 90-degree angle drives.
Right.
It'll work. We can make it work. And then if you do ever have to take this apart, this little chain right here needs to be inside the circle. And the chain should be floating in the middle.
Oh, that's the actual.
So that tells the valve, well, it doesn't tell the valve, but it lets
Right.
you see that the valve is level.
So
okay?
this stays on. This little tag stays
Yep,
on.
yep.
Okay.
And see how the ball's like right in
Yes,
the middle?
yes.
As long as it's right in the middle, we're good to go.
Because if something changed and it's not in the middle,
If
then
it's
it
not
may
level,
not,
you
right?
might not be able to reseat the valve itself.
Got it, got
Okay?
it.
Because it's like a big ball that sits on there.
It just drops.
Yep. And then if something vibrates it off, and it closes the main valve. Okay, so we'll go in the
And
building.
where's the?
Outside the mechanical room, this is going to be your domestic water backflow, and then it goes underground. I'm standing on the water meter vault right here. Okay, so the physical meter is underneath this compartment right here, and then the water goes underground into the building.
So, okay.
Sorry?
They're not going to pour concrete around that, right?
I
You don't
believe
know.
this is finished product.
That's finished product. Although this is.
Yeah, that was provided by the underground utility company.
Like the dripper.
They haven't certified it yet.
This is the intricate stuff you're talking about.
Don't tell anyone this is my temporary office right now. All right, real quick, we have the same configuration. We're building B in the mechanical room now, okay? We have our water that comes up here. We have our low flow regulator, which is set at the higher PSI.
80.
Yes, the high flow regulator set at the lower PSI. Okay?
70.
Yep. Everything else in here is the same as far as configuration of the pressure reducing valves and the gas. Back in this corner over here, if you can see the laser pointer, we have the main pressure reducing valve for the boilers. Remember, that sets the pressure to all these boilers. The other regs on each boiler it's not a shut-off valve, it's a flow maintaining valve, okay? It's not 100% shut-off valve, so you don't adjust the actual static pressure with those regulators. That's only a dynamic set point, okay? That should just be something that on your annuals, the boiler guy is dealing with. We shouldn't need to do anything with those. Every boiler has its shut-off valve, strainer over here, the control valves. Like I said, this building is the same. We'll just go over the quick layout of all the stuff over here. I did forget to tell you that on the heating hot water over there too, there's a bypass line for a minimum flow for the boilers, okay? When we do heat exchanger training, I'll show you there's kind of two ways to create that low flow. There's this bypass line, or there's a three-way down here on the heat exchangers.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So these make the hot water, the
Domestic hot water. Yes.
And why does this heating water return?
So
Because that's how it heats this water.
yeah, we're using the heating hot water loop to make domestic hot water.
I got you,
So
I got you.
domestic's on this side. You good?
Yeah, I seem to me like the water's mixing here, but it's not.
So no, there's the water stays on different sides of the plates in heat exchanger.
It should never mix.
Right.
Potentially it could though. So that's something that. But there's drip holes in the heat exchangers. So if you ever saw water dripping out of the heat exchangers, it's probably there's like dual elements, so the waters can't touch. And if it does leak out of one, you'll see that out the bottom. You'll see a leak out the bottom. We'll get over that tomorrow
Okay.
with the heat exchanger training.
So the heating.
So yeah, the water.
So if the heating water's down,
Then
You
Domestic
have,
hot water
you have
down.
no domestic. But yeah, the entire heating hot water system is down.
right.
You wouldn't have domestic hot water.
yeah, there's a reason they put a bunch of boilers.
Yeah, they are redundant. And then the fourth should be the fourth really is redundant, but with how the internal controls work on the boilers, it can bring all four on. But they should never run at full fire. You should never have 4 boilers running at 100%. Something would be wrong in the logic somewhere. But the boilers itself does all of its staging. We'll talk about that tomorrow too. So over here, we have circ pumps over here. These
Okay.
two are your building circ pumps.
Okay.
So these are taking the water from the 8th floor down here. Here's your aquastat. Comes down, it splits apart. Remember, these are twin. Twin means that only one will run at a time. Building circ pumps. We have the tank circ pumps on the wall over here.
Now is that manually set or
It's-
is that?
The switching will be done automatically through the master.
Okay.
This one right here, this is the master and this is the follower.
Okay. So that master will decide I've ran for a week.
Yep. It's
I'm
keeping
gonna
track of
I'm
it.
gonna let you run for.
But again, we'll have
next
more
week or
training on
whatever.
that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow. Same stuff with the hose bibs. There's a shutoff valve. It's just a little bit further down. Shutoff valve here. Remember the whole air venting thing I was talking about on the other building? It's the same thing over here. Follow those same procedures. Shutting off valves. Again, just when you're done, make sure you open the valves back up.
Where's your thermostatic mixing valve?
All right, let's do that.
Oh, sorry.
It's right on over here.
We have them in 22.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we have those valves, not the same ones, but we have
Yeah,
thermostatic mixing
Right.
valves
Okay.
in our existing building. They're just older ones. Oh, okay. There's the tree.
So here's our mixing valve here, and
Okay.
it's crazy. This morning we were good. This morning we were 120. I'll have to look to see, or we could do some investigating. What did I say about this temperature right
It's
here?
gotta be at 120.
We want it 120, right?
Otherwise it throws everything off.
Because yeah, all the mixing valves up there won't be able to expand. Because those bellows that we were talking about upstairs are 115 degrees.
So it's like a couple degrees below 120, and that's what you gotta.
It's like
Yeah, you gotta get it up.
115 really. So 110 is the line in between the 100
Okay,
and the
okay.
120.
So you really gotta get it up to 120.
Yeah, because
Okay.
those valves upstairs start,
Okay.
they will be closed at 115 degrees. So if we're putting it out, we're gonna lose 5 degrees up there. We're already gonna be at 110 and they're not gonna do a good job.
So we could
closing.
use a permanent marker when it's out and just mark
Sure.
the gauge, so you know
Sure.
that.
I mean, domestic water is, I will never tell anyone to put it over 120.
No, I understand.
Yeah. So 120 would be the leaving on domestic water.
Yeah,
So-
buildings now, most of the time they're like.
Since we're
130.
struggling here, everything turned off. See how quiet it is in here?
Right.
So that could have been our problem. Nothing's running. No pump is running.
So the
We don't know how
controls are working on it. Somebody's working on the system.
I'm gonna say yes, because this thing's been dialed in for a long time.
Got it.
So something weird has happened.
So-
Let's go though, because it's quiet. Where's my there we go. Chilled water pump, chilled water pump. We don't necessarily care about those right now, and we see our buddy sitting in the corner over there.
Oh, yeah.
These are our tank circ pumps.
Okay.
Okay. So we got 135. We'll do training on this. We got 135. Because if our tanks aren't at 140 either, we're relying on that 140 going into the mixing valve. So if we start dropping that tank temp, then we won't be able to mix to that 120 outlet temp, okay?
So we're
Are you doing a lot of testing right now in this building? You're not doing anything over here? Do you know why everything just turned off? No. Somebody's playing with this stuff. We got another pump and off. Again, VFDs will do that training, but we were in off and auto, so if they were to switch from pump 4 to 3 and this was off, it wouldn't turn on.
Shut off.
Okay?
Yeah.
So those two, aren't they one for each boiler?
They're redundant. No,
Okay,
these are
okay.
redundant. These are your building heating hot water pumps. So those are the ones we talked about over there.
Okay.
So over here, they're going to be these guys right here. So we have heating hot water pump 4,
Okay.
4, and 3. Okay, and these are circulating the heating hot water throughout the entire building and the heat exchangers. Right. So if these pumps aren't running, we're not going to be pumping the 140 through the heat exchangers. They're not going to make their temperature.
So
Let me look at this one.
no, they just there's a protection. It's a protected. You can put
Yeah,
foam on them.
Yeah, you
This
don't.
is a radiator. This is just a fancy radiator.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just the plate and flame heat
Yeah.
exchanger. There's
Right.
just plates stacked in between each other,
Right.
and you're just transferring that energy through the
So
tube. But if
it's
you
the
maul
same
these
thing as
threads,
like a-
it won't come apart.
Right.
So definitely keep these things on there at all times.
It's the same thing like we use in the chillers, building 58 and building 21 and building 20. It's just, you know, the refrigerant goes through one side, the water goes through one side, but on this one, it's just water against water.
So, did we?
So right now, until this thing gets back online, we're gonna be chasing our tail because we have a thermometer over here.
Right.
The water coming into the valve is only like 132.
Something.
Well, I don't know what happened. We just had a spike. We're right back at 120. So it had a little dip. They might have had some like a weird usage in there, or just momentarily it went down to that little lower number.
So in the event that he was talking about a leak in one of the risers,
In the main
in the main riser before
On cold or hot.
on either, yeah, on
Okay.
both.
So if it's on hot, this is your main leaving shutoff valve. So this is 1, or you could do 2. If it's easier to get to these 2 before reaching to that one, you can shut both of them. You have to make sure you shut both. Okay.
Two different sides.
Well, if
No,
you
I
do
got
if you do 2, it's because there's 2 regulators. Okay. Or 1 main shutoff valve. It's just if someone's a little bit shorter than me, they won't be able to reach it. I would recommend
That's the
keeping
only
a
shut off
6-footer.
for this whole building.
From domestic hot water.
For domestic.
So we can label it.
Right.
We'll paint it red or some blue.
Right.
We'll paint
So
it.
you shut that off. You don't have to shut the resort.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
you
going
still
there.
have to.
Okay, because we're in domestic hot water.
Right.
Okay, so you shut your valve or shut your valves. You could shut all 3 if you want. Okay, just whatever you shut off, you have to make sure you reopen.
Right.
Okay,
And then are these the resorts over here?
No,
those were the tank
those are for
pumps.
the tank.
So then over here,
Oh yeah.
first we want to shut off the pumps. Right. Okay. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but make sure when you're shutting these pumps off, don't ever just shut them off and turn it back on. There's capacitors and stuff in the pumps because they're variable speed. It can lower the lifespan of the pump if you cycle power really quickly on and off. So we've turned those off. We have a shut-off valve here. Shut-off valve here.
What brand
Okay.
are all these valves?
Apollo.
Yeah. Cool.
So we are shutting the water down right now, domestic hot water. We're gonna actually shut it off. Okay, and then this is a little different where so you have a leak on the hot, but if someone tries to go use water,
Cross.
yes,
Yes.
they can, if they
It's a
leave the
single-
faucets open,
Single faucet.
the
Single.
cold will backfeed,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Vice versa.
Huh? Huh?
So if you do have a leak, you gotta shut everything down. The hot's isolated. So if that is the case, and you have if you have a leak in the wall,
Or you could
the best thing to do would be
you could
come over here and
potentially
just
shut off
the main.
whatever's on the backside of that, but you
Oh,
would have to
oh,
shut
yeah,
all
well,
the fixtures
too.
off.
If you have like a main leak, just shut off the water right here. Just shut off the whole water to the building.
Right.
Okay. Right now.
And then done that, and that shuts everything off.
Yep.
So you
Okay.
wouldn't have to shut off all them other valves.
You wouldn't have
No.
to touch anything there. Okay.
Because of now going through it, because of that
But,
situation.
yeah, we
It would probably be a bigger, if it was on the 8th floor, you're only gonna see it for like a minute.
Right.
Until they equalize.
Yeah, but
if it's on the first floor,
But what happens too with us is that residents are in the building. It happens, say, at night time at 10 o'clock. They're not going to listen to
We
us.
would
They're going to go
probably
into,
shut off on
and
the
then,
other side of
then they're going to go into each floor's got 10 restrooms times 7 floors.
I'm saying
There's
we would
70
shut off on the
restrooms,
other side of the
and you don't know where
regulator.
you have to go back and switch it all. Okay.
then it's gonna be a pain. Well,
Right.
This is the
Right.
feed side.
yeah,
shut
it's
off the
gonna,
feed
because
side.
if they see no water, the odds of them shutting it back off
No,
for
no,
you
they
are
won't.
gonna
They
be
won't.
zero. But you'll be able to see it. We can see someone's using a lot of water right now.
Right.
Or just using water. So then we'll open this back up slowly.
Yeah, generally, we
We fixed our problem, right?
We usually shut
Yeah,
off on the
yeah.
other side of the regulators. The building side of the regulators.
You can shut it off wherever you want, as long as
What
you
would
shut off
you
one
What
valve.
would you normally do?
To me,
Can you call me on the landline, over?
I don't have a preference.
we've always cut it down because if it's down for a period of time,
Keeps the
sometimes
water in the
keep it
regulator.
You know,
I mean, the water will stay, since we're going up, unless you're draining it right here,
Yeah.
there's gonna be water in the
Right.
regulator. So, and I mean, that repair work you're talking about shouldn't be more than 24 hours, right?
Generally, it's not more than an hour or two.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, either one of these wouldn't matter. If you're shutting off for long period of time, you'd probably want to drain it anyways. Drain water out of it. You don't want, in domestic system, you don't want water sitting anyway. You know? Okay? So we fixed our leak. Remember, if we do have a catastrophic leak inside of a wall on the domestic system, we're just going to shut the main water off. Let's say that then. So since we're here and you guys prefer shutting the downstream valve of a regulator, we're going to shut this valve right here and we're going to shut this valve right here. Right. That way you have pressure into the valve. Just know when you do that on this style valve, like if you close this real quick, it'll spike the pressure, or it can.
I mean, otherwise,
Okay.
I'll be back in half an hour.
and then you would, if you're only shutting off the main, just to make sure you shut the pumps off on your resource.
Anytime you would drain water, so once you start draining the water, yeah, after you isolate this, you want it to shut off. Yeah, I would shut off all those pumps. So you'll also want to shut off the tank certain pumps too. Unless you're keeping water, if you're not draining anything in this building, but you're probably draining in this building anyways. So just shut off all the pumps. If you're isolating the building, shut off all the domestic water pumps. There's four.
What's that for up there? That shut-off valve up there? That.
They have this tied into it.
Oh, okay, okay,
So
yeah.
it can't be there because it's
So we
for the
could,
check valve.
so we could use it as a drain down system. Put a hose,
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, put a fire hose or a
No,
reducer on it.
just 90 it down to here, and then put a hose connection. We can bigger one.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So that would drain it the fastest.
Right, right.
So where's the vent on this system now? Is there a vent?
Right there.
Vent.
It's manual.
Okay.
So if you had to do any work on this line, you would just open that valve right there to vent out there because you don't want it stuck in that pipe. You don't want air stuck in that pipe.
Okay, there's the other store.
There's no way to actually.
And this is
drain
domestic.
Drain this one in.
There is on the Union,
Oh, I guess so.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I see that.
It is possible though.
Yeah. Anything's possible.
Did you
I
say
understand.
you talking about a valve?
So if
There's
we, had
not
to,
a
if we had to recharge this,
Yeah.
we would have to drain this down to recharge
Okay.
this.
Okay.
So to drain this
You
down,
just shut
would
this
have to shut
valve.
this off
You get a
and
bucket and a
disconnect
rag.
this.
You tie the rag to
Okay,
the Union,
okay.
and it'll drip into a 5-gallon bucket. It takes
I
like
mean, we don't hardly ever touch these anyways.
Right,
they
right,
don't
right.
really, it's not it's kind of a non-issue.
But you do want to check it at
Right.
least once a year
Yeah.
or 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that we do that on our buildings that we have now,
But I do recommend doing
Yeah.
that, okay? Because
but
again,
now that I know, now that
well,
someone's
if these
told me
tanks,
that,
if the tank fills, because it's a bladder,
Right.
okay?
I've seen. Yeah, we've seen that.
If this fails and it gets waterlogged, it's like having no expansion tank.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And if a heat exchanger or something goes out of whack, it has the
Don't you
potential
start
of
hearing
blowing
that
apart.
knocking noise when it goes
It
bad?
could be that too, but it could be a
Right.
slow increase
Yeah, right,
of
right.
pressure, and then it can.
So how do you change the bladder on this one?
This one's not. You have to replace
You
it.
just
Replace
it's
it.
easier just to.
Okay.
We've got a bladder once before when Leonard was here for
Yeah.
up the hill. Sometimes you just unbolt
Yeah,
it.
this is a small unit that doesn't. You replace
Yeah,
the
that's
tank.
what I've replaced
Yeah.
some that are bolted in, but this one, it looks like you can't even do anything, so.
Yeah, you'll just undo it from the ground, and
Replace
just
it.
grab a new tank. Yep.
The tabs that are bolted to the ground like that, that's not factory on that tank though, is it?
No, those tabs aren't.
We got a new tank, we have to re-weld the tabs on.
Good.
Let's see. Thermostatic valve here. Did everyone see that valve did recover? We might have had just a little bit of
So we're
a
back to
usage.
120 now.
Do you want to turn it back on?
Yeah, let's turn it. I'll turn everything back on, and then I'll go over this valve right here because that's the shower valve. So obviously, yeah, we want to open the valves first, or open the valve first. Okay, we open the valve. Our mains are on. I need to get back over to the pump. And we'll turn these back on, they'll boot, and then it'll take back over. We'll show you tomorrow, but just real quick.
You shut those off too. These valves.
Yeah.
Those red buttons on those pumps, do they do anything?
Yeah, we'll go over that tomorrow. That's the interface to the pump. It'd be better if you just operate them with the switch. You shouldn't have to do too much, but
Yeah.
the switch will then get rid of all the power going to the pump. They're already set up for speed control at their speed. There's a black dot down here, so this pump is running.
Well,
This pump doesn't have the black dot.
We can
so
talk
it's-
about it tomorrow, I
Yeah.
guess, if
Okay.
we have specific training, because
Sweet.
I have way more questions than,
Okay.
you know, like when we replace them, what do we do, and, you know.
When
all
you
that
replace
sort
the
of
pumps?
stuff, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll deal with that tomorrow. Okay. So for that mixing valve that's over there,
We should be like around 120 now.
this will be your circuit setter going into the high temperature loop.
Right.
Okay, so this is the makeup water that goes through the heat exchangers
Right.
on this one, and then the other circuit setter is going to be right below the mixing valve itself. Okay,
Right.
and that's like the major flow is there. You want less flow going through here, but just enough that it
Keep it
keeps you
running.
at 120. So if it goes over 120, you would start cutting water over here, or you could open the valve over there. Does that make sense? Are you following me? But we really shouldn't need to do that now.
Yeah.
That valve does require maintenance. Use the O&M. They have a procedure with how to take it apart and the repair kits you need for gaskets and O-rings like that to put it back together. On those mixing
O&M
valves,
is the brand that.
O&M is owners and maintenance manual, or operation, excuse me.
And we're gonna get one of those.
Yep. You'll get those from Sun. Yep. So make sure you follow that. On these mixing valves, there's a placard. You can use this as a start. I would recommend making something bigger than this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would, if it's possible, minimally once a day. I would say twice a day. How many shifts do you only have one shift?
Yeah, one
Yes.
shift, yeah.
Okay. So I'd probably say at the beginning of the shift, at the end of the shift. That way you can prove that you've looked at it twice, right?
Okay,
Minimally once a shift.
right.
Obviously, the more you can inspect it, the better. Just make sure you look at all this. Just the date inspected, you can put the name or not. If you've done any work on the valve, I would also add another column for the temperature, just so you can record temperatures, right?
So every day you want to switch it on and switch it off? Or do you-
No.
Oh,
Just inspection.
Okay.
Just to
Well,
verify that the
okay.
temperatures are
One
right.
quarter, building 20.
And this doesn't go back to the building management system or anything like that. We can't see this temperature from there.
Right
Not
or left-hand
that I
side
know.
or all clock?
That would be a good question for Doug, though,
Yeah.
on BMS training.
Well, there's no wires yet.
Right.
Copy. Serena and the
Oh,
staff are
I
in
mean,
training
it looks
right
like
now,
there's
and
a-
no way you can close that off.
Probe right there, but I
You
don't
got
know
it.
if
Yeah, that's a question for Doug.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, I wish I could help better.
I mean,
They should be out in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Definitely, this would be one of the most important things that you're recording pressures on daily.
Okay.
Just to make sure if anything happens out there that. What was the temperature? Well, look, I could tell you what the temperature was, right? Obviously, if you don't have 2 shifts, you're not gonna be able to do it twice a day. Or if you are, it's at the beginning and the end of a shift. I would at least do it once a day. I don't think it's a code or anything required, but it'd be a
It just helps.
best practice.
You can see.
Again, in case something happened or
Yes, it
something does
fluctuating.
happen, you can say,
Right.
look, dude, we're making rounds on this, we're making sure this, right? If you are recording that temperature, you could record the tank temperature. There's not a specific thermometer on the tank, but what you could do is, again, look at what pump is running,
Yeah.
and you can record the temperature off
Okay.
the line that's running, that the pump is running. Obviously, the pump has to be running to know the tank's temperature, okay?
And those are not, those both have to be running.
Potentially off of an aquastat. So if the tank is satisfied, the pump might not be running.
Okay.
The one pump could be calling versus the other, right? It just depends how the dynamic of the water flow.
If it needs more water flow or not. Only one.
Temperature.
one pump
It's
could
all temperature. So we're trying to maintain 140 right here at this aquastat, okay? So this setting on the aquastat, this is what's turning on and off the pump, needs to be 140, okay? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. There's one here, and again, since the tanks are flipped, the other one's on the back side.
Right.
The other one, you might need to use your phone. Some of them are close to the wall. You can look at all of them and you can make an adjustment call. Okay.
How often should these tanks be relined?
Relined? That's a good question. I'll have to get that for you.
Just wondering.
Yeah, I would say you want an annual inspection on them. We'd have to look through the O&M to follow that procedure on the inspections. There are manholes over here.
Yeah.
So you have a manway here, an inspection, an annual inspection. Would you guys do something like that, or would that be
something else.
hired out, like health and services or something? I would assume. Okay.
Yeah, we would warrant it someone to just rewind. So might as well, if we're pulling it down, draining it down, we might as well rewind.
The good thing is you can do that inspection on one tank at a time. You don't need to take everything down. And if you're isolating one tank, make sure that you isolate that pump. Because if you drain this tank and this cools off, it will try to turn on a pump,
Right,
and then there's no water for it. Well, what it could do is it'll just
So each tank goes to one,
Yeah.
each one of those
Each one
pumps.
pump, yes,
So one
yes.
tank is designated to one pump, and this tank is designated to the other pump.
It should be the left tank is the top.
Okay.
Left top.
All right.
It's kind of like you read top to bottom, left to right. The worst case scenario, if you only isolate one tank, if you have to isolate both, you have to turn the pumps off. If you drain this tank while the pump's running, it'll just keep that pump running, but it'll always cycle water into the opposite tank because all the piping is tied together. Okay. But if you do have to work on this tank, remember how many valves are there to isolate a tank?
3.
Okay, perfect. Plus the isolator, right? Because you have to isolate the tank with the middle. So there would be 3 plus the isolator valve. Okay. In here, that's what I got. Our shutoff valves to isolate the 2 sides are gonna be up above us. Where did they go? Let me start with this one right here. This is our bypass chilled water valve right here with the check valve in between. Right, so no pump running. The water's gonna be flowing through this line right here to bypass the pumps. And then the heating hot water shutoff valves are over here for the segment of the building behind us.
Okay.
Segment 1. Chilled water valves. Where did they go? Sorry, let's go okay, right here. See these bubbles right here in the insulation?
Sure.
So that's gonna shut off that side of the building. And then the 4 other ones. So we got the heating, right? Heating here, chilled here. The other ones are easier because all in a row. Shut off valves right here, 2 for heating, 2 for chilled. Remember, those shut off zones are only for heating hot water and chilled water. The domestic is how we did it. You have to shut everything down. Just shut the main water going off to the building. If it's a main plumbing issue before any isolation valves. Okay?
Yeah.
Any overhead on the first floor or any vertical going off the building.
You gonna be in here for a while?
Hopefully not.
I was gonna be drilling, but it makes a lot of noise.
Yeah.
It's gonna bother you. I can wait.
Do we have more questions in here? Like you said,
No,
we can wait,
I think
so.
we done.
Again, this is the same as that one.
Okay. The tanks, do they have check valves like on each tank?
They
or
don't need check
anything,
valves
or-
on the tanks.
Okay.
The water can only come out the one way and it won't go back in the other one.
Okay.
That's why if you are working on the valve on the tank, you have to
Shut that tank.
yeah, you have to isolate the outlet valve
Right.
or isolate all the individual valves. We already took this one apart. That's why I taped it together. So these are the shower valves. These are going to be pretty typical up top. So we talked about the shutoff valves. Dang, I didn't grab the. There's just a chrome escutcheon, right? We can picture the escutcheon covers all this. So you'll take off the Allen. I believe it was 1/8 inch. So we can take the handle off. There's the set screw in there. This little sticker will be here. Okay. And then, so you'll take this off. Don't lose it, because for the next guy, they need to be able to read all this.
Right.
I can't remember what type of clip this is called, but this clip is around this ring right here, okay?
Circlip, under the circlip.
Yeah, like is it a C-clip? I don't remember exactly what it is, right? But you gotta, Home Depot has the tool, you put it in there and you expand it and you can take it off, right? So you gotta take the clip off and you gotta pay super attention to where these stops are. It's not the end of the world if you don't, you just have more work to do to put it back together, okay? So and this is that the shower won't turn off, or you got like something's weird going on with the shower. So this is your temperature stop, the high temperature stop, and this is your shut off stop. So if you're there and the fixture won't turn off, we want to make sure that this is making contact with the stop point, okay? Because if it's not, like, so when you put it back together, and say it's like over here or something, it might go past the stop, okay? So you got to make sure that that's like in the middle point. So make sure you mark that when you take both of them off, okay? If you don't take those off and you start twisting it, it's gonna mess up the inside of the cartridge and you're gonna be replacing the cartridge. So then a wrench, we already loosened this. A wrench, loosen this. Okay, and the cartridge comes out. This is what I wanted to show you. There's screens on the inlets of both sides, okay?
Who makes this?
It's Acorn.
Yeah, Acorn. So it's a SV16. All of those models and all that will be designated on the schedules, okay? So, but again, before you do all this, we have to make sure we turn these stops off or the main water shutoff valves are off, okay? Because this one's not hooked up. All the units do have these flexes, okay? They go up to a piece of copper. And then there's a shark bite fitting from the outlet with plastic tubing that runs up to the shower.
Yeah, see, I got
Okay?
pictures
And yeah,
of
that's all a one-piece thing.
Right.
But there are screens on the inlet of the shower cartridge, okay? And these do pop out. You use like a fine screwdriver and gently grab it from the outside, okay? And you can clean that off and then make sure you put it back in. Or it could
Put
be
a new
something that you can,
cartridge.
not a new cartridge, just a screen.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. The cartridge is the whole body, okay? Do pay attention to which way you take this apart. I'd have to look at the instructions, but yeah, okay, there you go. You have a hot and a cold, okay? An H and a C. So the H is on the left. Make sure you match that back up, because if you don't, it's gonna operate backwards, okay? And then just thread it back together. Again, this is where you can, for the stop, I'd have to figure out, we'd have to look at the instructions again. I haven't had a chance to take too many of these apart though. Hopefully we're not having an issue with the shutoff point,
Right,
but we
right.
have to look at the manual to figure out, you know, where you'd want that to go back. It should rest right against that stop right there. And then that one, you would have to pay attention. So with the second one,
If they marked it,
well, that or
Look at the
it would be a
manual.
pain in the.
and switch it on and test it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Put a
take-
thermometer up there and be like, oh man, it's only getting 100 degrees, and then you know that you didn't adjust this right. It's adjusted too low. It shouldn't ever be able to go over our 100, 120 degrees that we're outputting here. Okay. And then obviously you'd want to put this clip back on, clip it down in the ring down here, right? And then put this tag on. And then you put the escutcheon on, and you put the handle back on. And then just snug and a scotchy bit.
Okay.
Just a scotchy bit, okay?
That's a Scotia bit.
I know.
Quarter. Not a quarter.
Not even that, an eighth. Just
Just
a
cinch
16th.
it, cinch it.
And if you go too far, it could strip out the threads in the handle. Hey, look at that. We're coming back online.
Okay.
A and B. Hydronic pumps, these pumps are the same as over there.
10 horsepower.
Maintenance for these is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
There are greasable bearings on the motor. There's 2 Zerk fittings. What we can do is track runtime through the VFD. I'll show you guys that, and then you can grease for that. Let me see if we grease. And then you can reset the run hours. It'd be like once a year normally.
Or X amount of hours.
Yeah. I don't
3,000 or
see. They
whatever.
have the bearings listed on here, but not the grease. So we'd have to look in the O&M manual for the type of grease that they recommend. Okay. And then how many squirts, because it's all going to be super variable on what type of grease gun you're using and all that, right? Every grease gun distributes a different type of grease, a different amount of grease. I don't believe we talked about this building. We're in building B still, mechanical room. We have the main chilled water shutoff valves over here, okay? Supply on this side, return on the right. So if you had a main chilled water problem, these would be your main shutoff valves. Remember, if you shut these valves off, you lose cooling to the telecoms and electric rooms. You'd have to provide temporary cooling with like a move and cool or some type of device like that. Because you'll lose it in the corridors too. Okay, you'll lose cooling. Sleep up here again. It's gonna be this valve right here. This is a normally closed valve, okay? We use it for flushing. But in the design of right now, it's not to be, it's a normally closed valve.
We won't ever use it. It's just never using it.
It depends. Again, if you had a situation where you need to create a primary, secondary, where the 41 degrees ended up not being a good temperature, and you try to bring it up, but it was here for flushing and needs to stay closed. That's the most important thing that we know for right now. Because if this thing starts cracking open, you're probably going to start seeing like 50 degree, 55 degree water. You're going to get warmer water in the building than what you're wanting, especially if a pump is running. Any other questions? A lot of stuff.
Tomorrow.
A lot of stuff. More factory training for tomorrow.